Boston is a 20-mile warm-up for a 10K race.
Are you running a marathon? Oh, I could never run a marathon.
Sure about that? A marathon is like 42 kilometers, 26 miles. I don't understand those people.
That used to be me. But not anymore. Welcome to the Marathon Podcast. My name is Kristian Warwick. Warwick runs on YouTube, Instagram. Really happy to have you here. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. Before we dive into today's episode, which is a Boston Marathon episode, I thought I would just let you know, for those of you who don't know, I'm not running Tokyo. I was supposed to be on a plane, probably at the time of you listening to this, if you're listening on the day that it comes out. I made a video on this on YouTube on Warwick Runs, so you can watch that if you want to kind of have the full story. But in short, I think that I've kind of been pushing myself a little bit too hard lately, or like the last few months in a lot of ways. Not with work and stuff, but more like we've been traveling and a lot of things have been happening. And I think that this kind of led to, I'm already a bit like anxious when I'm traveling and all of that, like which stresses me out. I think that this all kind of led to my body almost saying stop in some way. So I feel like I've talked about before, when I'm training, when I'm running, I feel like my body's just pulling the brakes. And that has led to me feeling kind of sick and feverish and stuff like that. This is just like what I assume is the reason why I've been for now more than 2 weeks feeling sluggish. And with that, it kind of just ended up making the decision today, actually, of not running the Tokyo Marathon, not spending 40 hours on a plane within the next 4 or 5 days. And I think that is a smart decision long term. It's awful to make a decision like that. I'm sure if you've ever had to do something like it, you know what it feels like. Regardless of the reason, I think that not running a marathon sucks in itself. You know that it's hard to get a spot. You know that a lot of people want that spot. And I've been training for this, and I was hoping that, although I've been saying that this is going to be a training race, or a test race, hard long run, I honestly been feeling like my fitness is at a place where I would still be able to run a PR. So super bummed out. I was also excited to see Tokyo. I just want to be clear on the fact that this is not something that has been easy. It's not been an easy decision to make. And I really hope that I'll get the chance to go to Tokyo at some other time. But I also feel like I actually got a message from Brendan, who has been on the pod a few times with the banter episodes, and he told me that this is a sign of me kind of being mature about it, and I hope that's what it is, that I'm being smart. I was talking to my doctor today as well, and she was like, it sounds like it would be a horrible decision to go through with this, to travel that far, spend that much time on a plane when you're feeling like this, and also running a marathon. So I'm not feeling great, but I'm also not feeling awful. So I'm very curious if this whole thought process around the Tokyo Marathon and whether or not I was to go, kind of like how much has impacted how I'm feeling, and if I'll wake up tomorrow and feel better. If I do, that's obviously great. But regardless, the facts are pretty clear and straight. I am in nowhere close to being ready for a marathon, and that's why it really makes sense to cancel this trip, postpone it, I guess, because hopefully I can go back or go there at some other point, at some other time, and just focus on Boston. And maybe I'll be able to get a decent week of running in after this. I'll probably try to hold back on the harder stuff and just do some easy running and easy training, just to to move my body. But yeah, quick little update on that. I really didn't want to get to this point, and also, yeah, just to clarify, this was also partly the reason why I was talking about this a few weeks ago. I could kind of tell that my body was starting to, yeah, decline in some ways, and I just really, I just really want to take care of myself first, which I am with this podcast. So having a lot of fun with that, and I'm very excited about this episode. So let's kind of so I mean, like, get into today's episode, which is with Stephanie Dyer, and she's been on before. She was on earlier this year when I had three different guests on, and she's done so many Boston marathons. We did talk about the Boston Marathon, everything that you need to know. I think that it's going to be super interesting if you're a first timer, but also if you're running it for the second time or third time, even if you've done it several times and you just need to refresh your brain on what it actually is like. And I did get a text from Stephanie after, because on the episode, I don't really remember right now whether or not we were talking about the exact number of times that she's done uh, the Boston Marathon, but she just wrote to me after, because I think that we might have misinformed you guys in the episode itself. So I'm just giving you a little bit of a heads up. So she's heading into Boston number 16, not 18. So uh, I don't really think this changes anything. She still is uh, 15 times Boston marathoner, and she has a lot of experience with the course, with the or the like the logistics. Sorry, with all of this, and so yeah, I think that this was such a good episode. I feel like this might have been the best Boston episodes so far, just because we got to go really in depth, and we also got to uh, explore mm, all topics, everything, and the whole episode is just dedicated to Boston. So, with that, I think that we should just dive into or jump to the conversation with Stephanie. I hope that you're having a good run and that you're enjoying your day or your run, whatever it is that you're doing listening to this. We're having Stephanie back on for this special Boston episode. Welcome back, Stephanie.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be back. Great to see you.
I think that, or I know that you are the one that I'm having on for this Boston series that has done the most Boston marathons. So I'm excited to
Oh.
hear from you and hear about your experiences.
Well, I'm delighted. It's one of my favorite topics, so thank you.
Yeah,
Love
I think that, like, now I'm obviously, for the listeners, I'm talking to you as if everyone knows who you are, and you've already been on the podcast for that special episode with three guests in January. But for those who don't know you, will you just give a quick little recap of your running journey? And I know that this year marks like a lot of years of marathon running for you, and I also know that Boston was a very special start of your running journey.
Yes, yes. So, I am now 56. I'm a mother of 3 and, married for almost 32 years now, and my journey started, in college. 39 years ago at Boston College, which is, a very special place in my heart, and I was not a runner going into college. I was a competitive tennis player, and running started for me, in college to try to, stay in shape and, run off the stress, and I literally started from scratch, and I did not like it at all, but I gave it some patience, gave it some time, and Marathon Monday was a party day for the first 3 years of college, but I was so inspired. I mean, it just was magnetic to me, and so my senior year, I was able to run Boston, and forevermore, I was hooked, and here I am, 35 years later, back to Boston. Um, it will be my 18th Boston in 2026, and I'm so grateful that my body has aged well enough to be strong and run, actually last year, I'm on a streak since 2015, so this will be my 12th consecutive. So I'm a streaker.
Wow. Yeah.
And,
Which means you
a lot
have
of
a lot of experience.
Yes, I run through, all seasons of life. Like I said, I ran as a student. I ran in my 20s through, took a little break with having 2 young children, and then, um, after my 3rd at 38 years old, started back again, and so I've run in all seasons of life and all seasons of weather in Boston because we know
Yeah.
Boston brings brings the big question mark with weather, so definitely a lot of experiences under my belt, and I love every single one, and they've all taught me invaluable lessons that I bring to life, so I can't say
Yeah,
enough about race. Yeah, it's special.
luckily we're on here now to talk about it, and the first thing that comes to mind when you are talking about this, you use the word seasons, and I feel like with Boston, you can literally get any season on that marathon Monday. You said you've done all of them since 2015 now. So 2018, for instance, is probably like the nightmare of conditions for a lot of us. And will you first just say something about, because I'm going to rephrase this a little bit. When I picture Boston Marathon or any marathon, I am picturing myself on the start, sunny, my sunglasses on, feeling like this is going to be a beautiful day, because that is like what we all want. And that might also be what we've seen, right? But then come 2018, it's like 32 degrees Fahrenheit, raining, almost snowing, and you still have to line up. Can you first just say something about how it was to be on the start in 2018?
I'd be delighted. So, yes, it was actually, I would describe it in 3 words: dread, anxiety, and fear. I didn't
Hmm.
get out of that warm bus that I was in. And by the way, 30-mile-an-hour headwinds. Let's just add that to the
Yeah.
cold,
Yeah.
not sprinkling Seattle rain, but pouring rain. So, at the start, you're sitting there with drenched shoes, and I actually brought an extra pair of shoes, so I'm putting my shoes on, and, it did nothing, but we try our best. So, yes, it was blowing. I just didn't wanna do it. But, I said, "No, not today, not after all the work." And there's only one way to get to where I need to go, and that's I mean, I can't go back to a hotel or my friend's house. There was only one way to Boston, and that was running it. So, it was a mental mastery kind of day, and I learned a lot, and we all got a lot stronger that day. And
Yeah.
I think that, yes, it was a day where I said, I've worked so hard to get here, as we all do, and I just made a decision in my mind. And we all just and to preface that too, training I would submit is 90% physical, 10% mental, and then when you get to that marathon day, it flips. I think obviously it is physical, but you're ready, you've done all the work, it's all in the bank, and I think it's more 90% mental, 10% physical. Maybe you could adjust that a little bit. So I knew I had to lock and load and get in the zone. It was almost like I just went into business mode, and I said, I'm just going for it. And I didn't let myself entertain any uh, other thoughts. But yes, it was a feeling of dread at the start for sure. And then I executed, so I was very grateful to get to the finish line that day. It wasn't the time I wanted, I don't remember what the time I was going for, but I ended up with the 3:45, and at the end of it all, I realized it was a gift to just be able to finish because a fair amount of people dropped out because of hypothermia, even the pros, so, uh, it was it was a big day.
Yeah, and I feel like you did say something about like just getting to the start on that day, and uh, That's something that I think for people who are preparing for Boston, and especially those who are traveling to Boston, you see a lot of people asking like, "Oh, what should I wear for race day?" They're asking those questions now, and in some places in the world, you could say that, "Oh, it's April, so you can just bring this because it will normally be these kind of conditions." With Boston, you do have you have no idea, and so. Uh, Getting to Athletes Village that day, and I'm sure that you knew maybe the day before, maybe a few days before, that it wasn't gonna be one of those warm days. It was gonna be rough, but you're still getting on that bus, and maybe reality kind of kicks in when you're on the bus. Like you said, when you were exiting the bus, and I think that it's so important then to have a little bit of a game plan in terms of what to bring. Like you said, you brought extra shoes, and talked about that before on the podcast about Athletes Village. That's where you're gonna be sitting, waiting, and it's gonna be wet on the ground. It's gonna be wet. It's it's gonna be cold. What did you bring with you? How did you prepare for, I guess, like that hour or two, or maybe even more? I don't know how long you were in Athletes Village that day, but how did you prepare for that?
Yes, great question. So, I always feel that preparation is power, and the institute the Boy Scout mode. Just bring as much as you can in that clear bag, and just absolutely something to sit on, so you're not soaking wet. A change of clothes, trash bags, old socks for your hands, so you can discard. I love old socks because you can tuck them in and keep them with you, or throw them away, and I and always bring to Boston plenty of snacks because you're there for longer than to my knowledge, I don't think there's any marathon that starts that late. So,
No.
that's a tricky, thing, and you're essentially running during your lunch hour, and so to
Hmm.
make you have enough power and fuel is as important as all your weather gear, but I think you can't overdo it. Just to keep yourself warm and as dry as you can is really important, but definitely having something to sit on in Athlete's Village, extra pair of shoes, and you make so many friends. Everyone's in the same boat. That's the one thing. You're never alone, and you gotta look for all the angels around you because they're there, and they're all there to support and help. And people will give you Vaseline, or share their goos, or share their waters. I mean, you're not alone. So if you do forget something, chances are you'll be able to fill in the gaps perfectly
Yeah.
fine. Yeah,
And on that day, because last year, and that was the only time that I've done Boston, we when we got to Athletes Village, it was mostly like open because the weather was nice, like no rain or anything like that. So they didn't have tents up. What was the like situation back in 2018? Did they have tents for you guys to sit under, or were you still sitting
they
under the
did.
open sky?
They
Okay.
did, and I happened to be on a bus that year with I got to stay on the bus a little bit longer, which was very nice. I was with a local running club, but once we got to Athletes Village, plenty of cover, but, it's a lot of people to move around, so you kinda have to stake your ground, and um, I think the amount of clothing that you bring beforehand is really important. Like, I started running with more clothes. I looked like I was going skiing, and I had layers and layers. Thankfully, my best friend lives in Boston, and she, brought a trash bag full of clothes, and I could handpick, but I think I would definitely pack if you see the weather's bad, just pack as many layers as you can, so as you're running, you can then
Yeah.
start, discarding, and I kept a rain jacket on till, I think, mile 15, and then I literally felt like light as a feather because I didn't realize the hood had a pool of water in it. I took my jacket off and it was like 10 pounds off of my body, so I sped up. But, I think layering is really important as well. And just like that layer of dryness, like, you're not gonna wanna run with a trash bag. Some people do, but the trash bag is or old foil, keep your old foil from another race. 'cause that's a
Yeah.
really easy, light way to stay warm. But yes, layering's
Yeah,
important.
because my next question when you were talking about these layers that you were throwing off, uh, like during the race, is that for a lot of races, whether it like say it's a little bit chilly in the morning and you're like, okay, this is perfect because as soon as I start running, it's gonna get warmer. But with Boston, since you're going downhill and like you said, it's also headwind, and that wind is not gonna really change because you're running in the same direction the whole race, right?
Right.
So uh, for you, what was your strategy or what would you recommend to someone who's thinking about one thing is what they're wearing when getting to Athletes Village, but also when starting the race. And maybe they're like, okay, I'm going to start out and then I'm going to get warm. But I guess like that's not necessarily the case with Boston, especially because of those downhill sections in the beginning.
It's very true. So, I personally always run with compression socks and shorts. I never run with, long tights. It's just you see it all the time, but for me, I think it's most important to keep your core warm. I mean, even in I've run Boston where it went, within, an hour or so, the temperature dropped 30 degrees, and none of us were
Wow.
prepared for that. It was cold, and, I think keeping your upper body is the most important in your hands more than waist down. So I would say get rid of all get rid of the sweatpants that you have on and just if you can layer up top and just as soon as you start warming up, great. But on a day like that, prepare for something that you can wear the whole time
Yeah. No, that
because
makes sense.
yeah, very sometimes I've worn my throwaway long sleeve to the finish line, not thinking that I would need it, but sometimes you need it, depending on
Yeah.
how much rain and how much cold. So it is a little you can't overthink it too much. I think preparation is power, and just make your plan, stick to it, and embrace it, and don't stress over that. Just put your
Hmm.
energy into your more of your running strategy than all your clothing. It's easier said than done, but just I think prepare, have your layers, and know it's all gonna work out.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Then we got that part covered. I doubt that we're gonna see anything that is worse than that day. Who knows? Maybe we will, but at least we know that what to prepare for if that happens. And then I would love for us to kind of go through that day, that race day. And you've lived in Boston, you've done Boston Marathon a lot of times. I'm sure you've stayed at different places in the city on race day. And one of the I think one of the questions that I've at least gotten the most from people, from listeners, is like, I'm staying at NNX. Is it easy to get into the city with a tea in the morning and to find the buses? Like, how early do I have to be there? Do I have to show up very early compared to like the bus loading time that Boston Marathon has provided me with? So those are questions that I'm getting. I don't know how many of like how much of this you're able to answer, but if you were to give an advice to someone who's staying in Boston, say maybe they're staying out in Cambridge because that was the only place they could stay at, is it easy for them to get into the city in the morning?
Yeah, so I have the luxury and the gift of staying in Winchester where my best friend lives, best friend from college, so I I get the red carpet treatment with driving in, and actually years ago, you could drive to Huckington, and
Hmm.
that's not possible anymore since 2013, so it has changed over the years, but it is such a beautifully well-run, just humming, pre-race experience. Boston is they have it down to a science. So, I have heard, um, from many that the T system, obviously prepare for it, and I would do a trial run so you know where you're
Yeah.
going the day before if possible. I've done that in cities where, like in Sydney, I had no I'd never been to that city, so we did a little trial run and time it, and So that would be a suggestion, and I think depending on where you are, Ubers are, um, usable perfectly fine because you're going early as long as you go early enough.
Yeah.
Even you can get in with ple I always say the more time, the better. I'd rather be sitting around, get up early, sit around, and, kinda like being at an airport early, so you're ready for
Hmm.
anything that can happen. You don't wanna add that stress to your morning. So, yes, I think that the T system's great. I think driving's the hardest part once you're in the city, but you
Yeah.
can get right up to Boston Common very easily, to get on those buses, and they're like clockwork. They're just
Yeah.
it's a little chaotic, but they stage it have, I guess, little different time slots for that they allow for, so it's not you're
Hmm.
not bombarded with everyone all at once, but they do a great job, but I think driving in T is perfectly fine, but I would leave early. I wouldn't
Yeah.
arrive and plan for it. Yeah, I wouldn't arrive, 10 minutes before the bus is ready to leave, so that would be my tip.
Yeah, and I think also, like you're saying, the tea, it's very reliable. Obviously, the tea is, at least my experience is that the tea is running normally on Marathon Monday because it's not really where we are running anyways. And then also for the ones that have never been to Boston, I think that it's easy to think that, oh, they're probably shutting down the whole city. But like, if you were able to, like you said, take an Uber to Beacon Hill or whatever, it's so easy to walk from there to the bus loading. It's not like New York. So like when you get into just anywhere in the city center of Boston, it's very much a walking distance. It won't really take you that long to get in there. So I think that is also worth mentioning here. So for people who are thinking that Boston is a big city, but it's easy to get into the city center and just walk from there.
It is, yes. I think it's actually
Yeah.
harder to, um, navigate after the race because there's just so many closures and so many people and so many spectators, so
Yeah.
but pre-race is fine. And just be prepared for a nice long morning before you start
Hmm.
because it's the drive out can just be prepared for a long drive because I every year I think, "Oh my gosh, I'm really gonna be running this? How much longer are we gonna be on this bus?" And,
Yeah.
but it's fun. You always meet someone wonderful next to you and embrace it. But it's a
Yeah.
long ride on a slow
It,
bus.
yeah, and I think that it's like you said, you have to kind of maybe close your eyes or talk to someone and try not to really focus on how far
Mhm.
out it is, because you really get an impression of how far 26 miles actually is, right, when you're driving there. And yeah, I personally, I didn't take that bus. I was also dropped off at that drop off point much closer to Hopkinton, which is also an option for those who have like families in the area or people are staying closer to that. There's also an option of being dropped off at that
Mhm.
drop off point where it's, I don't know, to 10, 15 minutes of a bus ride, I think, to Athletes Village. So just wanted to
Yeah, I
mention
think it's
that as
nice,
well.
especially as a first timer though, to kinda to go with the masses and
Hmm.
have that certainty
Yeah.
'cause that
No,
it
for
would make
sure.
me a little nervous driving and not knowing how to navigate all that because there are some road closures as you get closer to Hopkinton. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, cool. Then we've covered the morning off and Athletes Village. And one thing that I guess surprised me, although I've done my research, was that it is quite the distance from Athletes Village to the start out in Hopkinton, right? So you are uh, in Athletes Village, you're waiting there, and then based on your bib number, you'll know when you're gonna go to kind of, I don't know. We just gather in some lines, and then you start walking towards the start there. Can you say something about like your experience with getting from Athletes Village to the start, and also maybe your warm up routine? Because some people were running around warming up a little bit in Athletes Village, some people were just jogging a little bit when walking towards the start. what are your experiences, or what is your routine there?
You feel a little like herded cattle, uh,
Yeah.
and but that's to me when things really get exciting because you're I mean, it's almost go time. So, I just don't overthink it. I look at that walk as more of my warm up, and I don't find there's a lot of opportunity because it's a little crowded, on that straight walk right before corrals. So I kinda look at that. I warm up a little in Athletes Village. I do some plyometrics, and I don't do a normal 1 to 2 mile warm up. I just might do some non-static stretching, and then right before we turn on to the main road to go to the corral, they have an opportunity with a lot of portalettes, and that's fairly new, and
Yeah.
it's very timely, and there'll be a table with shared, um extras, the Vaseline and extra goos and water and, you're not going off the cliff when you get off the bus and when you leave Athletes Village. So there's one more pit stop, which not many people know about, and the one little tip I could give you about that is, to go all the way back to the back. There are a sea of portalettes, and there are a lot of lines right up in the front, and inevitably, go all the way to the back, and you'll get right in. Um, and then off to the races, and you line up, and it's congested, so if you're not familiar with the start, you can't really see it on photos of the start line, but the road is so little, it's so narrow, it's
Yeah.
the same spot as it was in the late 1800s, so there's not a lot of space, and I wouldn't plan on being able to necessarily run your normal warm up, and that's okay. We're all in
Hmm.
the same. It just do your stretches in Athletes Village, and that walk will loosen up your body.
Yeah.
But I think it's
And
important not to anticipate that because then you don't get stressed out about it.
yeah, I remember personally, I just used that walk as a little bit of a warm up and just like try to jog a little bit and uh, try to be as relaxed as possible about it, just like you said. And you also described it perfectly well when you said that the road is pretty narrow. And I think that to a lot of people, especially if you are, say you've been running smaller races in your hometown or smaller races other places, it might be a new experience to be with so many people on the start and also on that narrow of a road, right? Like because you might have done bigger marathons and then you have like almost a highway where you're starting, so it's much wider. What is your advice for those first, I guess like you could say the first mile, because although the first 4 miles or something like that will be like downhill or rolling hills, the first mile is where people are more stressed out. Some people you saw even with the elite, with the winner last year, he crashed at that like first 100 meters or something like that. What would you say to someone who's doing this for the first time or who are worried about all the people on that narrow road?
Well, if everyone did this, it wouldn't work, but I tend to and I get a little claustrophobic. So, just so you know, if you're at all worried about that, I feel you, I see you, and you'll be fine. I tend to stay on the outside. I tend to go on the right outside, so I have a little easy exit if I feel like I'm, gonna bump into someone and, there's elbows happening and everyone's trying to get into their groove, and it's such I think we all have this pent up energy. We've done our taper week. It's like anything else, but it's a narrow path and it's crowded, it's congested, and you just have to give yourself a little patience and anticipate it, and it's alright, and you just know you're gonna have to be weaving a little bit in and out if you wanna try to stay on a pace, and that is the first strategy is, to conserve in that first, section of the race. I think there are 3 sections to Boston, and I can talk about that later, but I think that's where you just start to try to settle in your mind and settle in your body, and I tend to stay on the outside so that I just have a little more flexibility because people are still jumping
Mhm.
right off to go to the bathroom, and it's really interesting the things that are happening.
Yeah.
It's a little bit busy almost. Does that make sense to
It's
you?
very busy. Yeah, no, I remember last year there was this one guy who he was running. He was like a bit all over the place with his running and everything, and he seemed super happy, super stoked. And then all of a sudden, I saw him just running out to the side, and this was like within the first 4 minutes, where
And
he
those
just
cross.
yeah, because there was like a porta potty there, and so I saw him running in there, and I was like, "Oh, that's early, poor thing." And then all of a sudden, I saw him coming back, and he was just speeding up. And I think that it's also what you were saying. I think it's easy to kind of think that, oh, there are going to be so many people along the course there because you hear a lot of the like about the crowds, but there is like for that very first section, I don't know for how long, but there aren't that many people, so you do have some space to like you said, run on the side and have more. And then as you get down to the smaller towns, then you will have less of that because there will be barriers and all of that, but or maybe not barriers, but like people will stand more closer to the course, and you won't have that much, but then you will also things will spread out a little bit, I guess.
Mhm. And just I would just submit to you, do what feels comfortable. Some people really like to just get in the middle or on the left or on the right. I have my little my happy place, my little zone, whatever works for you. Um,
Yeah.
just because I like the side doesn't mean you like the side, but I think that's the my MO is just getting in my head, and I always cry when I start Boston. For me, that first
Hmm.
mile, I don't even care how busy it is because I'm just so happy to be there. I made it to the start. Making it to the
Yeah.
starting line of any marathon is a marathon, in my opinion,
Hmm.
so I just soak
Yes.
it in, and I really that's the moment where I say, "Okay, you what a gift." Every run, every
Yeah.
race, such a gift. Don't get too in your
Hmm.
head about this. Just embrace this, Stephanie, and run happy, run with a smile in your heart, and that's when I just speak into myself during that a little bit of I feel like that you could essentially take in the chaos of everything and kinda get a little rattled, or you could just get into your head in a very quiet place, and
Hmm.
practice equanimity when everything is a little crazy around you, and it actually can work. Um, that
Yeah.
I found can work, but it's taken some practice. But now I can tell you that that's what you can do is just get into your head and kind of, create your state of mind that you want to be in by talking to yourself and talking through, kind of being your own coach. So,
Hmm.
that's how I would
And I
start
also
it.
think that maybe kind of back to what you said about it being such a big day for a lot of us and such a big moment, right? Personally, I probably won't even run with my phone because I'm gonna be very competitive on that day, so I don't want that extra weight. But uh, I think that it is worth bringing your phone just to get that photo with that sign out in Hopkinton where it says "It all starts here,"
Mhm.
and with all the flags and just yeah, that is a very good one. I saw a lot of people taking photos of that. So I also recommend people to try to find that sign. It's pretty easy to spot, I think, in Athletes Village, but just get that so you have that memory. And there are a lot of people who will help you take your photo if you're by yourself. And
Absolutely.
again, yeah, and again, what you said, like you do meet people. I personally I didn't really connect with a lot of people in Athletes Village, but as soon as you started walking and on the start line, then you're standing there. Everyone's feeling the same nerves, the same feelings, and then you start talking, and then you everything just feels very natural, and you're not like you said, you're not alone on the start. Obviously, it's packed, but it's also like that's where you will connect with people and. The last time you'll talk to anyone for a few hours.
Yes, it's such a celebration, and I love the music is great. I always wait for Sweet Caroline, and that's what really gets me juiced up.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
very Boston. Yes, for sure.
Yes. And last year, at least for me, I was very happy that I got to drive through the course a few days before the race with my fiance, because that really changed. I've watched several videos on the course, but it still really changed my perspective because it's so hard to get the feeling of what it actually is like when you're watching those videos. So one of the things that, and I've repeated this so many times on this podcast already, but one of the things that really surprised me was the fact that it's not like downhill, all downhill. It's like you have these rolling hills. So you
Yes,
start running down, and then all of a sudden you get a little bit of a hill, but obviously you have that pace with you from the downhill section. So it doesn't really feel like you're running up a hill. But that is something that at least for me, I was very surprised by. So I guess if we were to take that first downhill section, is it until Ashland? Is that when we're kind of going a bit downhill and then it starts to flatten out down in Ashland? Is that when?
right? That sounds about right,
y-
and
Yeah.
that's a very important time, and
Hmm.
you've heard this 100 times. That's when you have to conserve that excitement, and you're just juiced up. You're in Boston. It's electric. It's exciting. I feel great. I'm so happy to be here. I'm ready, and you just wanna go fast, and a lot of people
Hmm.
use that, "Well, I'm gonna use those hills to go fast, and then that'll carry me." Well, you can wreck yourself. You can wreck your marathon. I mean, you'll feel it once you hit BC and dial
Yeah.
into that last 10K. So I would say that's when you need to, um, conserve and not go too fast.
Yeah, because I would love to hear more about this from your perspective. Because for me now, I'm saying it. People are saying it. Don't try to bank time in the beginning. It's not worth it because you're gonna have to pay for that later. Uh,
Absolutely.
but I'm still curious for you who's done this so many times. Uh, what is your strategy in terms of pacing yourself and making sure that you don't go out too fast when you run those first 4 miles?
Well, I try you mean as far as timing? Like, what do I keep my timing pace
Oh, yeah,
at? Or
yes. Okay, so say that you have a targeted pace,
uh-huh.
and then whatever that is, if we were to use like just to have a round number, say it was 7 minutes per mile, that was
Mhm.
like your pace. What pace would you target for that first 4 miles compared to the rest of the race?
I wouldn't go any faster than that.
No.
Nope.
No. And
Don't I
how do you want to feel? So like your feeling of running, because I think that when I go out for say a hard long run or if I'm doing repeats, then obviously I'm starting out and I'm trying to hit that intensity from the first mile. But with Boston, like you said, if you're running downhill and you're targeting your marathon pace that you want to have even when you're running flat, maybe even a little bit in the hills, that means
Mhm.
that you need to run slower in terms of effort. Like your effort doesn't can't be at that level. So how do you what kind of thoughts do you have, or what are you telling yourself to make sure that you're not going faster?
Right, well, really just I keep telling myself to run free and be relaxed and just get into the flow, get into the zone, and lean into the downhill, but don't fly through the downhill. And just to remember, Boston is a 20-mile warm up for a 10K race. You know, it's a you can negative split in Boston, but you're not going to if you go out too fast and beat up your legs. You're going to need that and want that energy even in the Newton Hills because
Hmm.
you're no matter how hard you've trained or how many and I don't train I live in Florida as you know and I until this year, as a new empty nester, I have you have to drive to bridges and drive to hills. I haven't. I've used strength training as my hill training. So it is possible to be in a flat place, but even if you were to, you you need to conserve your legs, and they'll
Yeah.
thank you, like and it's really hard, so people do it every year, they just overdo it because you feel
Hmm.
so good and you think, "Oh, this'll be my race," but if anything, leave the juice and leave the gas for that last 6 miles when you have the
Yep.
opportunity, very few hills, as you know, maybe at Fenway and, at maybe 23 to you can really maximize, um, what you
I
have.
love what you said there, that Boston is a 20-mile long 20-mile long run preparing for a 10K at the end. It's a perfect way to put it. And I also feel like, um yeah, like you said, you have to pace yourself, otherwise you might mess up your race and you put yourself in a very bad situation. But you can also have this great feeling of feeling stronger at the back end of it. And uh,
Absolutely. It's
with
counterintuitive when you're in it,
Yeah,
but you
yeah,
just have to trust that. That's probably the biggest advice, right, we could give someone, just trust
mhm,
trust us because
yeah,
there's no worse feeling than blowing up and hitting that wall that you don't have to hit. You don't
no.
have to.
A- and with all of your races, I have no idea, but my guess is that you've also had some or sometimes where maybe you haven't been that good at pacing yourself. Have you ever suffered the consequences of going too hard in that first downhill section?
I think early on, I made that mistake, I think once when I was in my
Hmm.
20s. I didn't know any better, and back then, in the '90s, we didn't have anything fancy. We didn't I had a Timex watch and
Hmm.
Alfred shoes we didn't have podcasts. I didn't know anything. I didn't know any better. I just had a belief in myself and I was just out there to have a good time. So, my strategy was not great, and we didn't have gels. I didn't fuel
No.
at all, which is so hard to imagine. I taken 5 gels in a marathon, and I can't imagine how I survived that. So, I think that once you hit that and really struggle. I've never had to walk in Boston, but, you see it all over the place.
Hmm.
My legs have seized up. You slow down, you feel like you're running a 7-minute mile and maybe you're running like an 8:30, and it's a rough place to be, and I never wanted to do that again, so I did start to, uh so spare the mistake and just trust,
Yeah.
and it really is possible to, get have that strength that a lot of people don't have in those last few 5 or 6 miles because it's
Hmm.
not hill. So it's an advantage. You just have to be patient with yourself. I think marathoning in general teaches us all patience. And this one
Yeah.
I think Boston requires some strategy and some patience and a lot of mental um, strength
Yeah.
that we
But
all have.
exactly. I think that's just it. All of us have it. So it's more about putting yourself up for success or setting yourself up for success in that first part, because you can make or break your race in a lot of ways. And I think that what's also very special about Boston, and I'm curious to hear your take on this, is that if you go too hard for that like downhill section, at least for me, it was not like I felt like my heart rate was so high or that my lungs didn't have that capacity. It's just your legs get so tired and you don't feel like you have the energy to keep pushing or running comfortably at that marathon pace. So for you that year, when you like you said, you did mess it up a little bit or you went out a bit too fast, do you remember what that felt like? Can you describe that feeling when you got to maybe just after the first downhill section? How did you feel?
Oh, well, after the first downhill section, I felt great at the time,
Okay,
but
yeah.
I I paid for it later.
Hmm.
When I really felt it was after the Newton Hills, turning on Comm Ave, heading into Heartbreak Hill, and I
Yeah.
thought, "Oh, no, I've I don't have much left in me, and I still have a long way to go." So mentally, it really takes a lot out of your mental bank when your
Hmm.
body is hurting so badly, and, depending on where you live, your 20 or 22-mile runs aren't feeling this way, and
No.
so it's hard it's really hard to prepare for that, but I think, if you so that second section I was referring to too is also really important, where you I personally just that's where I like, after the hills, it's like cruise control. You get in the flow, stay in my goal pace, knowing that, in those Newton Hills and even in, would it be, Natick? After Natick, there's some
Yeah.
hills, maybe at 16, 17,
Yeah.
and, you're not gonna necessarily stay exactly on your pace, and that's okay, but expect that and don't get discouraged, but still stay in just a cruise control mode and just lock in and just stay in a zone of control and pace and
Hmm.
kind of get I don't know, I listen to music, whatever works for you, and just stay in that kind of a steady state of power, and then as soon as you get to well, the pain's coming, you know that you're going to hit a moment wherever it is, whether it's on that Comm Ave stretch and that you have that climb, as electric as it
Hmm.
is, people are screaming at you and you take all that energy in and let it fuel you, but you're still hurting. Everything's gonna hurt. I mean, you just
Yeah.
have to accept it and say, "Okay, game on, let's go."
Hmm.
And but then once you get to that peak at BC and you turn that corner down into,
Beacon Street.
to Beacon Street, it's and you have a little downhill there, that's when I shift to competitive mode. Like, let's
Yeah.
lock in, and that's when if you've strategized properly, you can keep it steady all the way in. But
Hmm.
I would break it up in those 3,
Yeah.
and you can everything's gonna hurt anyway at that point when you're at mile 20 or 21, but if you look at it and switch it to, "Okay, now this is when we lock in and press the gas on a little bit more," instead of, "Oh, I made it here. I have 6 more miles to go." It's all, the strategy in your mind, 'cause it's all
Yeah.
we're all gonna hurt, right? No one's gonna
But what
escape it.
you're but what you're saying there is also so cool because I think that with Boston compared to a lot of other races, there are you can look at it as sections. So you can be like, okay, I'm just gonna get there, and then I'm gonna execute on my plan, and I'm gonna get here, and uh, I think that one thing that at least I haven't heard that many people talk about is the fact how normal of a marathon the Boston Marathon is between Ashland after the first downhill section there and getting to the Newton gas station. When when you see you're now entering Newton, and then you turn right, and that's when the Newton Hills will start,
That's
right?
good.
Like, but between Ashland and that part, it's so much like any other marathon in terms of the course profile. Like, it's not like London or Berlin where it's super flat, but it's still gonna be fairly flat, fairly normal conditions. It could be that I'm a Norwegian, so I'm just thinking of it that way. But I remember being surprised by how flat it was. I don't know about you.
Well, it's not Florida, but it's not
No.
right. It's it's not Berlin, but yes, I would agree, and,
It's
it's
not like killing hills, I guess. Like, they won't kill you. It's more like you're running flat, and then you might get a little bit of uphill. But I also feel like you might be tricked to feel like it's not really a hill because you're running with so many people, so you're not really able to see that incline, right?
I kinda have in my head, I'm just going through hills the whole way.
Yeah,
This is not London or a Berlin. We're gonna have some hills. I'm gonna forget where this hill is and that hill is. I've done it so many times, but it's just that's the day. I'm gonna be going up
yeah,
and down
yeah.
all day and just like a roller coaster. Just let's have fun with it. And the other nice thing about Boston is you can look at the course. There, like you said, it's very different from London. You're not turning. There's a lot of turns in some of these
Hmm.
races, which is tricky, right? And to keep your pace, you're kind of slowing down and speeding up and navigating, those corners, whereas Boston, there's that's a beautiful thing,
Yeah,
about it, especially in that midsection, you're just
yeah.
feeling it. So it's an
Yeah.
opportunity to just stay in the flow, and there's a little less course strategy in terms of
Mhm.
which is
I'm
helpful.
starting to realize now that when I'm giving advice on this, I'm thinking of Norway, where I can't run anywhere without hills. So for me, it's like flat if it's going a little bit up and down. But
Yeah, I
I
wouldn't say
still
flat.
think no, it probably isn't. But I would also say that there are definitely stretches where also, and like objectively, there are some places during the course where it's pretty flat. But obviously when you get to, and I think that also back to what you were saying about, or like what we're talking about with the downhill running, there's for almost for every hill that you go up, you will also have a hill that you go down after, right? So it's with that, if you are pacing yourself well, you can run by effort up those hills, and your pace might be a bit slower than your targeted pace, but then you will also get a very easy journey, and not in the same way as the first downhill section, but like just where
Mhm.
you get your pace back easily. You don't really have to, like you said, speed up to get back to your targeted pace. It comes very naturally when you go down those hills between uh
Totally,
Ashland and Nathan. Yeah.
I totally agree, and don't underestimate in Boston the crowd support and energy that
Yeah.
feeds your soul and feeds your body.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Special.
that's also something that I feel like you obviously have the very predictable aid stations where you get the things that Boston Marathon will provide you with, but there are also like uh, so many things that the crowd will offer you, like oranges or water, different things that you will be offered that you probably can't plan for because you don't know if you're gonna get it or not. But it's and popsicles, everything you can think of, really, they will offer you. And I remember running past them, and I was like, "That's really sweet, but I would never have that right now."
All the little kids, there are so many
Yeah,
puppies along the way, even in rough weather, they are out there, and it is a
yeah,
day of celebration, and you feel it. It's a party. It's a big party.
yeah.
So, it
It
feels good.
is.
Take all that in for sure.
Yeah.
And Boston Strong banners everywhere. It's definitely, I would
Hmm.
say, since 2013, it's only gotten better. They're
Yeah.
there truly for every runner, and it's beautiful. It's really kinda humbling.
It is. It's so nice, especially knowing the history of the Boston Marathon. I definitely
Mhm.
recommend to anyone listening to this to watch the documentary of the Boston Marathon history, because you get like the history from the very beginning, and then the documentary finishes with Meb and his victory in Boston in 2014. It was a beautifully made documentary, and you also really get the feeling of what Boston Marathon is, and like you said, Boston Strong, and like the people of Boston. So I recommend that one. I don't know if you've seen it.
I agree, yes, I was gonna mention that. It makes it
Yeah,
more meaningful when you get there,
it
for
does.
sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, I love the way we've been covering this. I also love how you kind of told me and the listeners now that there are hills, because I'm probably not looking at this in an objectively good enough way in that way. So I'm very happy to that you kind of corrected me a little bit on that. But then we get to the hills, the ones that people are kind of fearing. And again, I think you and I touched on it last episode, but also the race director of Boston Marathon and Jess McLean, they're all talking about how the hills are not that bad. It's just where they're placed on the course. Yeah,
Mhm.
but those are still hills. And if you could just take us through those, because there are also some people like to talk about them as just one hill, which it's definitely not. And some people are saying it's three, some people are saying it's four, depending on how you define a little hill. So, why don't you take us through the hills after that gas station? After you turn right at mile 16, that's when the hills
Mhm.
are starting.
Right, you mean on to Come Ave.
Yeah, I guess that's where it is. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, and that's something to visualize. So I like to visualize the day before any marathon, but especially even now, knowing the course, you tend to forget a little bit, the
Mhm.
specifics. And I like to look at the course elevation, the course map, and just kind of visualize and anticipate. So you kind of know, okay, when you turn, it's not just a mile of Heartbreak Hill. I mean, you're it's a steady climb. And I think just being ready for that pain and just be like, "Okay, what took you so long? Like, let's go." And
Yeah.
know that you're going to have I in my mind, I think of 3. Are there
Mhm.
4?
Good.
I
No,
think of
I
3.
also think of them as three. I do, but I remember when I was either listening to a podcast or I was watching a video where someone said the Newton Hills. It's like some people like to think of it as one hill. It's not. It's four, something like that. And I was so confused. And it could be that I remember wrong, but I'm pretty sure that because it just did not make sense in my head when I drove through the course and also when running it, it did not feel like four. It was definitely three. So I'm glad we're on the same page there.
Yes, we are. But I also, if this makes sense, I look at it as one stretch. So
Yeah.
my goal when I turn, my goal is Boston College. And
Yeah.
I know that's the pinnacle. That's where I cannot let up my foot off the gas, but I'm not the climb is over. It's the summit, so
hmm
to speak. So I kind of blanket it over just this one straight stretch, no turns, and you've got a lot of support, a lot of crowd support. And then once you hit BC and hear all those awesome, wonderful, fabulous kids screaming at you. You can't even hear your own self if you were to scream. I personally think I love Wellesley, but BC has just outdone themselves. And that to me gives me fuel. It gives me that rocket fuel
Yeah.
to soak all that in. I mean, I really don't I you can't miss that.
No.
You cannot miss you can get in your zone and get in your head, but take all that energy in from people because I think it is is fuel along the way. But, yeah, so if that makes sense, yes, you've got the hills, but I'm more in my
hmm
head, I'm thinking, "Okay, I gotta get from here to there, and I'm not
Yeah.
gonna overthink these hills. I'm going. Just stay steady,
hmm
stay focused, hunker down." Every single time I see a, an amputee every time, and I think,
Yeah.
"Okay, if he can do it, I can do it. This is it's inevitably happened." So, just keep reminding yourself and encourage yourself during that's when you're coaching yourself the most, I think, and
Yeah.
the next thing you know, you're at the summit.
Yeah, and what you're saying there, I think it's so good because I also remember thinking that kind of back to what we were saying about looking at it as sections. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna get to mile 16. That's when the hills will start, and I almost looked at it as that's when I'm gonna run a little bit slower, right? Like because I knew that I'm gonna go uphill, and I obviously the effort will be the same or maybe harder because you're running up a hill, but I remember just kind of looking forward to that section. But then I also like to even make it into shorter sections within those hills, just to be like, okay, I'm going to get to the top of this, and then I'm pretty sure I try to also have like shorter strides just at the top to bring some more speed with me over, and then uh going downhill was like, okay, I'm gonna kind of just go as slow as I can, or not as slow as I can, but like I'm not gonna push in this little downhill because you do have those downhill sections after each of those hills. And now I
Mhm.
don't remember if it's after the first or the second hill that you going, because then I remember I think it's after the second where I felt like we were going like it's a bit steeper downhill before
Mhm.
Heartbreak, or is it after the first one?
I think it's the second one
Yeah.
from memory.
Because I'm pretty sure that's when I took the time to fuel a little bit, to have a little bit of a gel, like not immediately at the top because I wanted to make sure that I my heart rate had kind of gotten back to not normal, but normal race heart rate. And then I try to fuel because feel like you did mention that you ran without gels at some point, but I feel like the hardest part of the Boston Marathon in terms of fueling, at least in my opinion, will be that section because you're going uphill, and like if you're going too hard, it will be even harder to digest anything, right? So how do you solve that part of, because it is after all from 16 to 21 miles, so it's 5 miles of running, and most people will probably fuel at least once within that section, right?
I fuel typically right before I turn,
Hmm.
around 16, and then at the top,
Yeah. Okay. So you run the
typically.
whole section
That's just how
without
my mind.
anything in there.
Yes, for me.
Hmm.
I just it's too much to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, it's the beginning and the end. So that one that we take in right before we turn, I feel like gets me to the top.
Yeah. Yeah. But how would you categorize those hills like compared to each other? Because they're, if we look at it, or we are looking at it now, as three hills,
Yep.
and then you have, they are all different hills in a lot of ways, right? Like some are more steep, some are longer. What is your, how do you look at them?
It's so funny. I don't really overthink them too much. I get into a zone where I almost numb my mind to them,
Hmm.
and I just think, you're just like keep your effort high, talk to yourself. That's when I swear a lot and I
Yeah.
tell myself I'm outstanding even though if I feel horrible, and I literally will just talk to myself the whole
Hmm.
time. And I don't I kind of take the hills away from my mind. And I know it's just they're there, and because sometimes if we I think for me, if I put too much into, "Okay, 1st hill, 2nd hill, okay," and anticipate it, overthink it too much, then the hills become bigger than my strength of mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It totally makes sense. And I think that's gonna be the case for, I think it will be the case for most runners in the moment. So I think that most people will probably feel the way you are. But I think that also for the people listening who are like, but I really want to know, like, what is that first hill like? What is that second hill like? And what is that third hill like? Just now that we are 2 months out
Yeah.
from Boston, and they're like trying to prepare themselves in their minds, like people sitting here in Norway or in Australia, and they have no idea what the course is like. How would you
Oh.
then rate them, I guess, like if we were to use a scale from 1 to 10 of like steep and length of the hill, w- what would you
Great.
say?
I think that there is to me, they feel overall just very steady. It's not like you're like maybe I've never done Big Sur, but you don't have anything sharp.
No,
And
I agree.
right? You agree? I think that it's just take it as it comes, but I think you need to prepare to kinda dial in and kind of gear up a little bit, like you're in a race car,
Hmm.
and as
Yeah.
soon as that first one starts, just gear up, and then you have to gear up again for the second one, and then the third one, I think it feels a little more like a climb, like a long
Yeah,
climb
it
after the
does.
first,
Yeah.
right? And you're
Yeah,
just
I think what's good about that one is that you're passing Heartbreak Run, where there's like the energy is crazy. So the, like when you're I don't know if you're halfway through the hill, but like you're approaching maybe halfway through that last hill, and that's when you get to Heartbreak Run, that
yep,
store. And
yep.
I remember feeling like, okay, I've gotten here, and then I felt the energy, and then you're kind of just carried up the rest of the way.
They do carry you. But I thought I loved what you said about 'cause I do this as well with your mind, like having um, short, goals, like short,
Yeah.
and almost like a reward in your head, "Okay, I'm gonna get from here to here." Because you can
Hmm.
there's some sometimes you can pinpoint like a banner or you know, I don't know, a statue or something on the course and you say, "Okay, let's just get from here to here." And then it
Yeah.
starts over and you reset. "Okay, let's go from here
Yeah.
to here." It's a very military way to look at it. I think the Navy SEALs, train in with that
Yeah.
mindset really works 'cause it takes things and it makes them bite-sized and chewable, and I think it
Mhm.
refreshes our mind because it's just tricks on your mind, right? So are the
Yeah.
hills. So it's just
Exactly.
by making
No,
it chewable that you can go to the next one with strength because it's cumulative, right? You're compounding your exhaustion on these hills, so it's if you could just go into it with more of an attack with each of the 3, then I think it's not so bad once you get to the top.
no.
'Cause you're gonna be tired. We're all gonna be tired, but it's just I think that's when the most important muscle is the one between your ears.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And I think especially heading into that first hill, because then you've had a bit of downhill and then it is flat. And then you hit the first hill. And that one is also going over a bridge. And so like over the highway. And I remember, I remember when I was preparing for this, that's where they also were saying that if the weather is bad that day and it's windy, that's when you're really gonna feel it because you don't have any protection from anything. Because most of the time you're running, you I remember feeling like I was either running through towns with big buildings or like old nice big buildings, or through woods or like trees on the side. That's how I look at it. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but that's just my memory of it. And then so that first hill I remember was like a little bit harder in the way that it felt pretty long. Although, like you said, it wasn't super steep. It was just like, oh, this is a never-ending hill. But I you can see the highway up there somehow, and you know that okay, after that one, I'm at the top. And then the second one, I really didn't feel like was that much of a hill. I felt like I was almost just rolling up that for some reason. I don't know if that was because I was feeling very good. And then it's like you said, it's more of a climb that last one. And then I was also very happy that I listened to someone saying that no, that you're not at the top of Heartbreak Hill when you get to that. There's like a sign or something saying you made it up Heartbreak
Yeah,
Hill, and then you
it's
actually
all
still have some hill left.
you're right. Forget
Yeah,
about that. It's a trick. It was probably an easy place to put a banner.
probably. Okay,
I
one
really
thing
think
we
that for me is once you see Boston College,
yeah.
once you make that turn, that right? It feels like, "Ah, okay, I did it."
Yes, exactly. You feel like, oh, now it's just the rest of the race left, but it's still still like you said before, a lot of hard running left. So it's hard, and
Mhm.
yeah. And I think we just quickly need to touch on Wellesley as well. Like you said, I do agree with you. Getting to Boston College is very special. You feel the energy, um,
Mhm.
but just like you hear about Wellesley Scream Tunnel. A fun fact is that I actually thought it was a tunnel with girls standing in there. That was what I thought. So when I was running through, I was like,
Where's
oh
the
wow,
tunnel?
there's no tunnel, and so, but I think that especially for maybe listeners who are not from the U.S. and um, weed is a little bit more normal in Boston and Massachusetts. So I obviously like haven't been there so much that I've gotten used to that being like that aim or smell of weed, but you do like especially running past Wellesley, you just smell weed. You feel like you're running through just a smoke almost. I don't know if you've experienced the same thing.
Yes, it's fairly new though, it wasn't always that way, but man, it's you can hear a mile away, you can start hearing their
Yeah,
screams. Impressive.
yeah.
It is
It's
impressive.
really cool. Yeah. And I think that maybe the
Full
most
stop,
important reason,
comparison, everything.
yeah, for those who want to kiss, they can definitely get one there. And I think that there's a lot of things that at least I appreciate about it. It's the energy, it's the effort they're putting into it with the signs, all of that, but also the fact that that's when you're halfway through the race. Like you know that's when you're halfway through, and it goes. I think there's a little bit of a hill just up there, and then you go down on the other side, and that's also where you get that first gel from the organizers. So, like, obviously, hopefully, you'll have your own with you, but you'll also get some at the bottom of that hill.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, I just
not
wanted to
plan yeah, and I would not plan those gels
no.
into your day, have pack accordingly, and that's just a little icing on the cake.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I think that's really smart. I remember using it just to replace some of the ones that I'd taken, and I didn't really need all of them, but I just thought it was nice. But still, like you said, just don't rely completely on that, especially because it could be that you miss out on them because you're running past them too fast, or anything could happen, really.
Exactly, and even on a cold day, the other thing to respect, about the course is the all these all the there's a lot of effort, right? A little extra effort we're putting in, um, and I fuel starting with mile 1. I never drink Gatorade. I'm not a huge Gatorade believer, it's just so sugary, but
Hmm.
on a marathon day, every mile I take in a swig of Gatorade from the start. I
Yeah.
might stop at
Yeah.
mile 23 because 'cause I'm full and I've had enough, but even on a cold day,
Hmm.
you need it.
Yeah.
Don't let
No,
the cold weather trick you to thinking you don't need to hydrate as you would if it
that's a
was
great advice.
65 or 70.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like you said, they're so good because I think it's every mile after mile 2 or something like that with that you'll get Gatorade and water.
Your
Yeah.
glycogen stores are they're
Mhm.
just getting sucked dry from all those hills, so you really need it, and you can I think people miss the mark on that, and that's another reason why you can be depleted those last 6
Yeah.
miles because you don't take in enough
Yes.
of the sugar
Yeah.
that your body needs, your muscles need, so I've made that mistake before too.
I think all of us have, like, in a lot of marathons, but like you said, I think Boston, because especially because of the profile of the course, it makes it harder, it's more important, it's easier to cramp up.
Mhm.
And now we are, with the exception of just adding Wellesley in here, but like we gotten to the top of the hills. Let's quickly try to also take the listeners through that last part, because this is where you have the second and the third turn on the whole race, right? Like, and then after this, it's just like getting to the finish line, that last part. But uh, after Heartbreak Hill, like you said, you pass Boston College, and then you turn to Beacon Hill,
Mhm.
no, Beacon Street, sorry, and then you'll see the Sitco sign. You'll see Brookline down there. It feels like the longest stretch in the world. Take us through
It
that
does.
stretch, that feeling, and also probably thinking, "Oh, I'm almost there," but you're not.
No, it's true. It is so true. So we all love the Sitco sign, and for those who don't know, it's exactly 1 mile to the finish. So, it's an amazing feeling when you're finally underneath it. But you can see it from, what, 2, 3 miles away? It's
Yeah.
very little, and, that seems like the longest stretch to me as well, because 'cause you're tired, you're really trying to stay above water, but again, it's a straight shot, and, so I would say that beginning stretch right after Cleveland Circle when you have all the college kids partying and screaming, and it's super fun. It's a fun vibe, and you take that energy in, and then it gets not not necessarily quiet, but you realize, "Okay, I have a good bit left here."
Hmm.
And, I think that not I try not to look at the Citgo sign because it makes it feel longer, so that would be one recommendation, and know it's coming, and then getting through Brookline, yeah, it's pretty flat, right? I mean, there's really
Yeah.
not a whole
That is
lot going
flat.
there. You just have to, uh, kick into your deep, 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 deep reserves,
Mhm.
to like I said, that's when I compete with myself and
Yeah.
really bring up the deep, deep strength that we all have that you just have to go search for really, really, really hard. And,
Mhm.
you might feel like you're putting more effort than your watch says because you are, because you've
Yeah.
just done a lot of work in the hills.
Mhm.
And then once you get to Fenway, which is what, 23, there's a bridge, and so there's a
Yeah,
little bit of
yeah.
hill. And Fenway Park, is really
That
fun
hill can
because
be really hard, by the way. It
I know
can be
because the
really hard.
has released and everyone's offering you a beer and you just wanna be done and you have 2 more miles to go. So, that little stretch from 23 to 24 is that's when I feel like your crowd support takes on a whole 'nother level. Once you
Yeah,
once you really get into the Newton Hills, like, once you get to that Heartbreak Hill area and beyond, it changes a little bit, but you are so
I agree.
covered in screaming and energy, and you just it's really cool to soak all that in and let out be the wind behind you, even if the wind is coming towards you. And then I think once you get to, there is that little hill, but it's manageable. It feels like a little harder than it really is. But then
Yeah.
once you get past that point and you start to you pass the Sitco sign, then you know, okay, I've got it. And
Because that's when you see entering Boston, right? And then Boston Strong on that, like when it goes under the highway or the road there.
And you inevitably will see, like every marathon, people are walking and cramping, and you just feel terrible for them, and you pray that that's not you. And
Yeah.
then I think that magical moment of going underneath the overpass and then right on Hereford, left on Boylston. It's it just carry that electric energy and that magnetism just carries you all the way through. It's almost numbing, right? Would you agree?
Mhm.
You can't even
Yeah.
hear yourself think or scream, and that is a moment of bliss when even though you're in so much pain, you're you're just realizing, "Okay, I'm here, and this is a victory lap," right?
Yeah.
No matter what your
Because that was
time is.
my because that was my question. I remember before my in Boston last year, people told me that I needed to really just let it all soak in and enjoy that last stretch. I ended up being too competitive, so I was just sprinting. I didn't even hear my fiance and my brother and his girlfriend and my fiance's mom. Like I didn't hear them. I saw my dad, but I was just running. Uh, and part of me is like, maybe I should have almost, like looked to the sides and showed some appreciation to the crowds. What is it that you usually do, and what would you recommend to people when they get to Boylston Street?
Well, the same I look at it to me, I look at it the same as when I'm going through Wellesley and BC. I literally just I try to lock eyes with a few people and thank them, and
Mhm.
because I'm so appreciative, like, I like it kinda gets me here right now. Gets me every time. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's,
No, it's
a feeling like no other, it's yeah, and especially
mhm.
after, gosh, I didn't expect um, I was supposed to race the bombing year, so every time I
Yeah.
turn on Boylston, sorry,
No, you're
very
good.
great.
No, you're good.
Yeah, very grateful. Sometimes when we, don't get to a start line, there's a lesson in that too, and a lesson we don't always see, and sometimes we can see it, so just to
Yeah.
realize in that last stretch that you're a marathoner, you're gonna get to that finish line, you can see it at that point, and, uh, look over at that memorial
Mhm.
and realize what a gift it is that you're there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really my advice. Soak it in. Don't miss that.
Amazing.
Don't miss
Yeah.
that. And it's flat. You go to
It
Chicago
is
and you hold
flat.
that whole it is truly, I promise it's flat, right? Once you take that right on Hereford
Yeah.
and left up
Yes.
Boylston, there no surprises, no surprises,
Because
just
Her
people
Hereford is a little bit uphill. Like when you turn right on Hereford, like that's a bit uphill, but that is very short. I don't know if I felt like that was a hill even, because then I was like, I'm just gonna get to that left turn where I can turn left on Boylston. And I also think you summed it up so perfectly when you said about like it's a 20-mile warm up to a 10K race, because that last 10K, like you were talking about, obviously going down, just to sum up that this last section, going down, passing Boston College and then Beacon Street. And if you've done well, kind of like what you've been describing or explaining here today, then you might have that extra energy to actually push through and take advantage of the fact that through Brookline, it's almost a little bit downhill, flat, like, so although you're tired, you might get more out of your effort in terms of like pace. Like you said, it's gonna feel hard, but you might actually, compared to a lot of the rest of the course, this is where you'll be able to run faster with maybe, if not less effort, but like your pace might be pretty high here, and that's the reason why you're able to potentially have a negative split in Boston, right? Because it goes, you have a lot of downhill and flat there, and then you get to Boylston, and you, like you said, then it is flat, and then you cross that finish line, and I guess like I mean, you just show the emotions that we feel when we cross that finish line. I'm crying, like I was crying when I was doing it. I get emotional when we talk about this. Uh, but then there was like, I think you mentioned before we started, either before we started recording or at the beginning of this episode, you were talking about also like the logistics after, because it was can be harder to navigate after. And I guess like a lot of people will be like, well, how do I find my family, or how do I find my runner when after finishing? How have you been solving this throughout the years of meeting up with your people?
That's changed as well. When my husband would bring my now 29 and 27-year-olds, they would see me 3 times on the course, and now I think if you can see your loved one once, you're
Yeah.
good. Because it
Yep.
takes time to park, to get to your spot, then to get all the way back to Boston. So, expectations there. And
I'm very glad you mentioned that, because a lot of people also are asking that, right? Like, how can I see my runner several times? And I'm like, there is a chance that you can, but most likely you can't. Although you're seeing them at the beginning of the race, you probably won't be able to see them a second time. Obviously, depending on the race time of your runner. If it's like 5 to 6 hours, then you have more time to get into the city. But it's still hard, like you said.
for sure, and I end up seeing a local friend, around the Newton area, but, like, if my family were up there, I would just say, "Let's see each other at the finish." It's so much effort for that one little moment, which we love and appreciate it. It really keeps you juiced up, but I think, if you really do want to, they have information on the website and in the welcome packet, so you can navigate based on where you're staying, and if you have a car, if you don't have a car, if you're taking the T, that is also dependent on an individual experience. So I don't think there's one strategy for participation to spectate, but I would expect I wouldn't expect more than once. So get that in your mind too. If you're a runner and you want to see your loved one 3 times, I think that's not the case anymore. And at the end, the streets are blocked, where just to get across the road is impossible, across Boylston. So being on one side or the other is based on where you're staying, where your hotel is. Strategize that before, and even ask the day you go to the expo, ask. Ask
Yeah.
the police everywhere, all over. Don't wait till the day of when you're scattered, but allow for a lot of time. I have a tradition every year we go to the same restaurant. I have a 3:30 reservation every year on Marathon Monday on Newbury Street, and it's just what we do. So, pick a spot ahead of time because you'll
Yeah.
get hungry and it's busy and
Yeah.
it's not really a big geographical space. So whether it's the plan going back to your hotel and eating, just make a plan. But meeting up, I would say, you go out of the chute and just like any marathon, you don't walk as long as New York, right? But
Mhm.
you can get out roughly at Boston Common. So I would say that would be a great place a safe place to meet, and especially if you have children, it's a nice place to roam around. There's a lot of grass. Um, that's probably an easy button in terms
Yeah.
of, a milestone because it's just a little hectic and there's people running around everywhere and so many spectators. So I would say
Because
that would
then you're
be
talking about the park, right? For those who are not super familiar with the terms. Yeah, no, no, you're good. But I think that is great, and it's also it was surprising to me how calm everything was in the park, right? Like you can sit down there. There are not that many people,
No?
and like you said, if you've been if you most or you've been to the expo because you had to pick up your bib beforehand, so then you've been to Boston. It's very easy to navigate, and you can get when you get to the park. Say you wanted to meet up at the restaurant or a store just to have like some place to meet up. It could be like you said at Newbury Street on Newbury Street, like whether you go back all the way back down to the tracksmith store, whatever, something that is easy to find and easy for people to be like, I don't know, because might be harder for someone who's never been there to be like, oh, I'm going to this restaurant. I don't really remember the name of it, but I'm going there. But like, find somewhere, whether it's a Nike store, Tracksmith, Lululemon, like those brands that you as a runner will most likely remember on the day of the marathon. Uh,
Little
and
doggy.
yeah, I remember I met my family at the Bandit pop-up store because we
Oh
knew
my
where
god.
that was, and that was like just next to the park, so it was very easy. I just went in there, and then they got there a bit later, so it's very easy, and I think that it's again back to what we were saying. Boston is easy to navigate. It's not that big of a city. You'll be fine, and I think also most people are running with their phones, so it's easier to reach your family after. Yeah.
But that said, I totally agree. That said, I would plan ahead. Kinda like you're
Yeah.
strategizing your marathon, strategize your pre and your post and your food and practice that because you don't you don't wanna go on the fly because the restaurants are all busy, and
Mhm.
when you're hungry, and it just makes for a more pleasant experience to celebrate, you know?
Yeah,
So I would
definitely.
recommend that. A lot of options, but,
Yeah.
that's the fun part.
It
But
is
I
the
but
fun
I
part.
wanna say, back to the seasons and back to the unexpected, like, I'm like everybody else. I start refreshing my weather app 2 weeks before,
Mhm.
and it can change the day before. The winds can go from west to east, east to west, east.
Yeah.
It is what it is when you get to race day, right? You have to control the controllables. Any
Mhm.
race is the same mindset, but control the controllables, but especially Boston can be really tricky, and I would say if there's a storm or if there's a big weather issue coming in, you be the storm, don't just flip that narrative, you bring the storm. If it's hot and you gotta adjust your time and adjust your strategy too, which I run in an 82-degree Boston Marathon and people were falling left and right, you bring the heat and adjust get rid of your outcomes because you're gonna have so much more fun if you just release all that. I mean, I ran my fastest Boston at 53. I mean, I didn't expect that. I was just embracing and I wanted to run my best and everything aligned that day. And then there were the races where I thought I was gonna do amazing and I didn't. I had to adjust or my legs just, my calves seized up or my injury spiked up.
Hmm.
And things are going to happen, and I can't impress upon enough you know, Boston especially should be revered for so many reasons,
Yeah.
respected for all reasons, embraced for all reasons, and celebrated. Like, don't miss out on all four of those things because you as time goes by, I don't remember my times. I remembered what I learned. I remembered how I got stronger. I remember how I grew. I remember the experience and the snapshots, and that's what matters. Yeah, we all
Hmm.
want a time. We all want a PR. We all wanna break whatever 4 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is for you. But at the end of the day, what matters is all the rest. It's not the actual outcome,
Yeah.
you know?
I
That's
totally agree. That's what makes it so beautiful.
Yeah. It's the
Yeah.
human spirit. It's what we learn. It's how we're better for life. It's what we take away from it more
Hmm.
so than the race itself and our time or how we
Yeah.
compete. So
That was an hour and a half. I told you an hour beforehand, but I think that this is like probably the best episode that's been recorded on this podcast on the Boston Marathon, because I feel like we got to go through everything in such a good way. And I'm so grateful that you wanted to come back on and share all of this. And I know that the listeners will be grateful as well. So can't wait to see you in Boston.
yes, let's make sure we see each other. I would love to meet your fiancé, and it would be fantastic. Thank you for having me on. And I really hope that some of my insights and experiences can make people feel a little more at ease or more confident and just trust. You have to just trust it. Even if I
Yeah.
can bring all of my experiences to bring some trust, you just have a good time.
Yeah. Now
It's
we'll have a
Boston.
shakeout the day before, so maybe you can, if you have time, or if you don't have anything else planned, then you can join that. That would be great.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you so much again for having me on. Good luck with training.
Thanks, you too.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Stephanie, for coming on the podcast, coming back on. I really, really appreciate that. And I also wanted to share that um, Stephanie is now running for a foundation. She's having a fundraiser. I'm linking that, everything, all the details for that down below. And I think that that's definitely worth checking out. And I hope that you learned more about the Boston Marathon today. I feel like if you listen to this episode, you might be good for Boston, regardless of what information you have already. So really appreciate you being here. I really appreciate you guys, like, even posting my video a few hours ago with like the decision of Tokyo, but also the last few months. I appreciate the feedback. People are sharing it. I've never really experienced this love from a community as I am now. So that is something I really, really appreciate, and just want to say thank you for that. Wait for you guys to hear that episode. It was such a good chat with a high level runner. Until next time, and have a good week. You listen to the Marathon Podcast, brought to you by Wild Studio. I appreciate you.